You know, one thing that we're going to do here on O'Connor tonight going forward is to spend a lot of time emphasizing the need to get conservative voices outside of just the political news journalism sphere, but into every fabric of life. Because guess what? Conservatives are in every fabric of life, whether they run a pizza parlor or they run a daycare center, or whether they're, yes, even teachers in the public school systems. They deserve to have a voice, and they deserve, what do the left like to say? Representation. And one area where they don't seem to be represented nearly enough is in the entertainment world, most specifically in the fine arts. Joining us right now, one of my favorite writers on the scene today. He is David Marcus. You see his work at New York Post, Daily Mail, Daily Wire, The Federalist, Fox News.com. For God's sake, David, give someone else a chance, will you?
One of these days.
That's fair. All right. So, David, you come from the world of the arts. You come from theater. And by the way, David has written a fantastic book about COVID-19. It's called Charade. It's about the lies of COVID-19 and the pandemic. And I want to get into that in a minute. But you do come from the arts. You come from the theater world. And you've written an article at the Daily Wire that focuses on the growing trend now of conservative voices emerging in the artistic world. First of all, where can we find them?
Well, I think one place that's doing a really great job right now is Daily Wire, especially their entertainment division, right? So we had the story of Gina Carano, the actress who was canceled from the Disney show The Mandalorian. You know, here Daily Wire puts her in a Western, and they're doing stuff with really high production value. You know, I think that conservative media, starting sort of with the Federalist years ago, but others have picked it up, are doing a lot more work on pop culture. I mean, guys like Kyle Smith always have, but you know, look at comedian Lou Perez, who has a new book. You're just seeing a steady stream of artists and people from the arts who feel very constricted in that world and are starting to find a home in conservative media, you know, which is good.
Yeah, let's talk about how they were constricted in that world. I can relate to this. My origins, before Andrew Breitbart plucked me out of obscurity and, well, I ended up here, was that I worked in the commercial theater world in New York on Broadway and in Los Angeles. And it's very difficult to have right-of-center political views. Hell, these days it's even difficult to have mainstream traditional Democrat Party views and traditional liberal views, like John Kennedy liberal views. You've got to think a certain way. Otherwise, you really are ostracized. That's how it goes, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, they'll flat out say you're making us unsafe with your ideas, and kick you out of a theater company or kick you off of a production. And that's really all the justification they need. You know, I'm glad you brought up Andrew Breitbart, because he was really the one who said, I think well over a decade ago, that politics is downstream from culture. And that's the lesson that I think conservatives are learning. I think the one blind spot that we have right now is we're not developing young talent. We have these sort of refugees who come over. But if you're 17, 18, 19, and you've got talent as an actor, as a playwright, as a director, as a screenwriter, the paths for you to learn your trade are still completely controlled by the left. And I'd like to see some of these conservative organizations get a little more involved in that and start to bring along the next generation of content creators.
Yeah, could you emphasize, sort of spin off of that and explain why that's important? Can you sort of emphasize how that's important, how that becomes part of our culture, and conservative ideas aren't part of that culture right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you watch the TV show and you see these sort of like, you know, super woke tropes or whatever it is, the person who wrote that TV show didn't drop from the sky into Hollywood as a showrunner, right? They probably started at a theater company or at a university or where, and they're probably very, very talented, and they probably got fairly good training. When David Mamet, who's maybe the most famous sort of now conservative ex-member of the progressive art world, when he talks about how he became a conservative, he literally says, I was never exposed to these ideas. I just had no idea they existed. And I can tell you from having been at places like Tisch School of the Arts at NYU and various studios around New York, none of these people have been exposed to it. And so if conservatives aren't at least exposing young talent to these ideas, things are going to just keep going the way they are.
Yeah, you mentioned David. Again, just to tie things up, when I first started working with Andrew Breitbart, the very first thing he asked me to write on spec for him was an article about David Mamet coming out of the closet. In fact, he never said he was conservative, as you said. His article in the Village Voice at the time, I think it was 2008, was "Why I Am No Longer a Brain-Dead Liberal." That was the bold statement that David Mamet made, and so that was the first
In
thing
the
he
Village
ever wrote.
Voice.
Yeah. That charade, the COVID lies that crushed a nation, that's the book that you wrote about the years that we've just been through, David, with the COVID-19 pandemic. You were one of the first people to actually call out some of these lies as the lies that they are. I think other people have sort of jumped on board, especially with regard to the vaccine, the masks, the social distancing. Where do you think we stand right now with regard to fact versus fiction with this pandemic?
First thing I want to say is that there's also a mask on the back cover of the book, so it is double mask. Very, very safe. There was one of the lies, right? Look, I think this is super unscientific, but I ran a Twitter poll the other day, and I know my feed skews right, but I said, have you taken any COVID precaution over the past week? And I think it was 90 to 10 no. Even here in New York City, there aren't that many people wearing masks on the subway and stuff. And but I was just writing about this. I have a piece out at Spectator about this. When I do see those masks now, I think our governor's saying now it's you do you, right? You do you. For 2 years, they said you do exactly what you're told or else. And I understand that people want to be kind to those who are still going through these restrictions and stuff, but kindness kind of got us into this mess, right? Kindness was why we didn't call some of this stuff out earlier. And I don't know, man. I think at this point, if you're walking your dog in the park all alone and you've got a mask on, that deserves a little mockery. I'm not saying go up to the guy and confront him or whatever,
Yeah.
but I don't think society needs to look at that as a reasonable thing to do for the vast majority of the population.
Yeah, I'm not one of those guys who goes up and confronts somebody or even makes fun of them, but internally I do. There's a whole lot of internal mockery going on. The people that I don't have any tolerance for anymore are the fully grown adults who are walking around mask-free with their children, but they're forcing their kids to wear the mask. It's despicable, and it breaks my heart to see. Do you think we'll have accountability? I keep hearing from congressmen. I've had a couple of congressmen on the show this week, and I've said, are you looking to have some real hearings here about how we got here and how we were lied to? And they all say yes. Do you think it's going to happen?
I do. I think if Republicans take control of the House, and I think they will, you'll certainly see some investigations there. The same in the Senate. I do worry to some extent that just as we've seen with the January 6th committee, which nobody really trusts for pretty good reason, because it's not really bipartisan. I do worry that when we get to a committee like this, that we might see the same thing where we don't have a buy-in from the Democrats, where we don't have the ability of both sides to take a good, hard, honest look.
Yeah.
Look, there will be investigations. Will there be a definitive one where the American people can finally exhale and say, okay, now we know the truth? I'm a little more dubious that we're going to see that.
We need intelligent, literate voices on our side, and it begins with David Marcus. David, thank you so much, and we'll be talking to you a lot in the weeks to come.
Thank you, Larry, and congrats on the show.
Thanks, man. More to come tonight on O'Connor Tonight.